comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. So we're talking here. And as we get into it, we are continuing with the conversation this hour. And shrinking space for right defenders. The Kenya National Commission of Human Rights is represented this morning by the Assistant Director, Samson Omondi, and he joins us in the Situation Room this morning. But Omondi, good morning.
Good morning, Drew.
How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Well, just come from a difficult conversation this last hour. We were talking about realities in our society in terms of what really is happening. And then for us to have this conversation, absolutely necessary. So, you know what, we're rolling with the punches, but let's see how we go through this hour. That's a long-winded way of saying I'm doing okay. And good to see you and have you in the room this morning.
Good to see you too.
When we're talking about, some of these things today. So thank you for coming. Dennis is going to welcome you with today's proverb. He'll tell you where it's from. We'd love to hear your interpretation of the same.
Yeah, our proverb today comes from the Comoros Island, and it's a beautiful country that borders Madagascar, Mozambique, and the Indian Ocean. Let's talk about the culture now. The culture is influenced mostly by Swahili, Arabic, and the Malagasy tradition, by the fact that they are neighbors to Madagascar. And the traditional dress includes kudzu for men and shira for the women. Let's go to the proverb. The tree with deep roots fears no wind. The tree with deep roots fears no wind. How would you interpret that?
The tree with deep wounds.
The tree with deep roots.
Yes. Fears no wind. Wow, what will my interpretation? I'll look at the tree as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And I would look at the roots as what you have in terms of expertise and what you do best in your field of that you work in. So for me, my interpretation will be that a person that has good expertise and does it well, does not fear anything. He's able to deliver on it without fear, without intimidation, without harassment, because his roots are in and you cannot pull him out in any other way. So that will be my interpretation. So I would look at it from a professional point of view. I think one, but also in terms of what you just need to do best. And the need to ensure that as you deliver on your what you are mandated to do, please give it your best.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll not be swept away by the wind. Yeah. So call for confidence, call for professionalism, and all those things.
One would say the professional side has really professionalized this morning, Good interpretation.
Well, all right then. And even as we get into this conversation, there seems to be a shrinking space in terms of what human rights defenders can actually do. Is there one?
Yeah, I think there is one.
A shrinking space.
The space is shrinking.
Okay.
I think for defenders, but I think the starting point would be to ask ourselves, so who are defenders? And defenders is any person, group. I mean, you can act as an individual, you can act as group, to defend, promote, realize, enhance, promotion, and protection of human rights. So by that definition, you find that it is wide and it encompasses any person doing anything, so including journalists. So a journalist is a human rights defender. A trade unionist is a human rights defender. A blogger is a human rights defender. A teacher is a human rights defender. And of course, institutions that work in this area. So we have a couple of NGOs, CBOs, grassroots-based organizations, faith-based organizations, and all those. But I think at the top level is that when it comes to promotion and protection of human rights, the state has a primary responsibility in ensuring that this is done. And therefore, the state also has the primary responsibility in terms of ensuring that the space under which these defenders operate is open and is free. I think at the Commission, we will confidently say that the environment under which defenders are operating, I think, has shrunk over time. And I mean, you could give a couple of examples that defenders face intimidation, they face harassment, they face arbitrary arrest, they face extrajudicial execution, enforced disappearances. And all those. So those in one way or the other, I mean, they are making the space to shrink because people fear to do their work that they should be doing when it comes to promotion and protection of human rights.
Samson, you see, right now, even as we speak, there's just the report that we received that Bob Njagi has been picked up in Uganda. And one would look at this space that continues to shrink, and one would argue that it's being perpetrated by the political class, and asks the question, why is the political class seemingly so afraid of rights defenders? Is it one because they have something to hide, because the rights defenders expose them?
I think one of the things that rights defenders do is they investigate, they monitor, they expose, they scrutinize. And I think increasingly one of the things we have seen is that states fear scrutiny. States fear exposure. So the scrutiny could be in form of corruption. What could be exposed could be corruption. It could be bad governance. It could be those things that are done which ideally the state should not do. And I think what we are seeing, I think not just in Kenya, but even what happened, we saw it. We've seen it in Uganda yesterday. I mean, we remember the case of Boniface and the colleague that were in Tanzania. So I think the fear is the state engages in a lot of human rights violations, for lack of a better term. So it's violation that's related to various rights. So it could be rights to health, rights to education, of course, civic space where we operate on a daily basis. And any person that comes to speak to this in terms of sharing information with the public out there and letting people know is always targeted. So I think for us, the fear is the state fears scrutiny. The state fears accountability, and the state fears all those things. So for me, for us, I think as an institution, that is where the problem is. Yes.
Okay, so I've always wondered, and maybe you can help us here. The organization of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, is it fulfilling? Is it? I know you're already smiling because I think you know where I'm going with this. It is a commission that is appointed under the auspices of the government of Kenya.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
Right? So under government, the commission essentially has been established to report excesses to government by possibly government.
Absolutely.
Okay. You see where I might be asking a question?
Yes.
Okay. Answer the question without me asking it.
So let me answer the question without you asking. The commission is established on Article 59 of the Constitution.
Right.
It establishes the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. But there are three institutions in that article. So we have the Commission on Administrative Justice, KNCHR, Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, and National Gender and Equality Commission. All with the mandate of promoting and protecting human rights. I think the commission prior to establishment as a constitutional commission is that we were first established as a statutory institution, established through an act of parliament. Now, with the coming in of the constitution, then we got more powers because now we are within the constitution. But now, what is our grounding? Our grounding is that we are established in accordance with what we call Paris Principles. Now, Paris Principles calls on states to establish national human rights institution, and it provides for a framework and guidelines that those institutions need to have. Number one is that those institutions should be independent, and independence is on different levels. Independence in terms of finances, independence in terms of operations, independence in terms of autonomy. It also calls for government that has established this institution. They need to have operational duties where they are able to carry out mandates such as investigation, capacity building, research, reporting on international obligations, and all that. So I think one of the things that the Paris Principles take into consideration is that they understand that states are human rights violators. But also states require their own institutions to advise them in terms of what they do. So it's a very difficult situation where you are a creation of the government, you are a creation of the state through the constitution, and it's expected that you also advise that state, of course, through also scrutinizing it. And in a couple of instances, is at times we do not agree on a couple of things. But then that has not stopped, I think, the commission from doing its work. So the commission, in terms of the mandate, is we have act as watchdog, one, and advisory. So advisory is fairly easy. I mean, you'll say you want this to be done. It will be done or it will not be done. But now when it comes to watchdogging, and you know what a dog does. A dog makes noise. And a dog makes things very uncomfortable. So I think that's what the commission does as a creation of the constitution, but also in line with the what we call the Paris Principles that establishes national human rights institutions across the world.
Okay. So sometimes dogs bark,
Yes.
and then they don't bite. Other times, dogs bark, and then they also do bite. So that the chances of you returning to the close vicinity of that dog in the future then are reduced. I think today is going to be the day when I say things without asking questions, because you can see where I'm going again.
I know where you're going.
So,
Yes.
it's you put the dog to guard you,
Yes.
and also yourself from any kind of harm. But if you see harm, you also want to say, well, we can either ignore the dog, or you can say, okay, well, don't bark at that one. That one, don't bark at that one, will ignore you. Do you find that the commission finds itself in that situation every now and then?
I think the commission finds itself...
Speaking specifically about Kenya.
Yeah, I think the commission at times finds itself in those situations where you do a lot of barking, but you see very little action taking place.
Okay.
But we also find ourselves in a situation where we do a lot of backing and we do a lot of action taking place. And I think if you look at the work that we do, I mean, we do work around elections, we do work around security sector reforms, we do work around judicial reforms, we do work on economic, social, cultural rights, and all that. So there are soft aspects to that work that are fairly easy. I mean, like when it comes to developing a policy, I'll give you an example that we've worked on developing a national action policy on business and human rights. And what we are calling on the state to do is that the state should respect, and of course businesses, respect rights and promote them as they do their work. We've worked closely with the National Police Service to develop the various laws. We have the National Police Service Act, Independent Policing Oversight Authority Act, National Police Service Commission Act, and all those. So as soft part of that work is taking place, I mean, the state has a lot of acceptance to it. And of course, other institutions that we work with. Now, the difficult part, now, at that point when we back, there's no problem. The difficult point when we back and we find ourselves in a fix is when a violation has been done. And therefore, you want to seek accountability. So the greatest challenge is soft advocacy does not have a problem. The greatest problem is now when it comes to seeking accountability, particularly for human rights violation. I mean, the pace is fairly slow. I think the pace is fairly annoyingly slow at times. But I think one of the things that I think as a commission we get solace in is that there will always be action at some point. It might delay, it might take time, but at some point you will see action taking place. And we also take solace in the fact that haki haiozi.
You know, Samson, we've talked about a dog that barks and bites, a dog that barks and leaves it there. But then again, there's a dog that is just a pet. And where am I headed with this? At a point where, because you've been barking a lot, I will wake up today and say, I would slash your budget to make it difficult for you to investigate, for you to expose and do all these things. And one would say, at the point when you see budgeting allocation perhaps has been increased is because this dog has become a pet and they need some dog food for them to continue playing our ball. And this is a situation that we've seen in the country before. You talk about the judiciary system, the judiciary, we will revisit. And what revisiting meant? Slashing of budget allocations. So in terms of the government that has put you in place and the laws that put you there, just how are we implementing it? Are we a dog that bites or are we a pet?
No, I think I can confidently say that the commission has not become a pet. Of course, one of the challenges we've faced over time, and I think is a challenge that applies to all national human rights institutions across the world, the issue of underfunding. I think the commission, amongst all state institutions, is one of those that is least funded. And I mean for obvious reasons. We fund you least, you'll not be able to do investigation, you'll not be able to do capacity building, you'll not be able to engage, you'll not be able to do international obligations reporting and all that. But, I mean, we've had a few development partners that support us in one way or the other. So from the state, of course, we get money, but it's money that has never been enough, I mean, over the period. But I can confidently say that it's never reduced the commission to a pet. The commission remains a dog, and a dog that barks and also bites.
Could you explain?
But I think one of the things that I think is also important to note is that as an institution that plays an advisory role, our work is really to push recommendation to other agencies. Like a good example, if you do investigation, and for us we do human rights investigation, the file will eventually be forwarded to ODPP for prosecution. So it's the work of the ODPP to do the prosecution. So we will be in the background, of course, doing advocacy and pushing all this to be done. So in terms of the expectation is that our cooperation with other state agencies needs to be very good. But I think one of the challenges we've also faced over time is the issue of non-cooperation from state agencies, particularly those that we work with from time to time.
Do you think that compensation for victims is something that should be handled by government, especially victims in a conflict situation, in a protest situation? From a human rights perspective, should government handle that? Because many rights defenders have been demanding for that. And when we talk about the shrinking space, that conversation seems to be going and circling the drain. Do you think governments should compensate individuals, families who've lost their loved ones as a result of such?
No, I think, and I began by saying that the government is the primary duty bearer when it comes to promotion and protection of human rights. So as a primary duty bearer, it's duty bound to ensure that rights are upheld, and of course, right to life being amongst them. I think what we've seen is we've seen deaths arising from government actions. Of course, actions or acts of omission and commission committed by state agents. And I think by state agents, I mean the National Police Service. I think let me just take you back a bit, that before we speak about the current compensation that we are having, is that we also had another process in this country called the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation process, which collected over 40,000 statements and did its work for 3 years and submitted a report to the president for action. I think as we speak today, that report has never been implemented. So I would want to look at compensation from the point of reparations. Now, when you speak about reparations, we are speaking about a host of things. Number one, we are speaking about acknowledgement by the state, that the state would acknowledge that we did wrong by, say, killing people. We did wrong by causing lifelong injuries. We did wrong by destroying livelihoods. We did wrong by... So the first thing is acknowledgement. So I think the question we need to ask ourselves is, has the state acknowledged? I think that is one. Number two, is the government the right one to do this? I think the answer is yes, because it's the government that has violated the rights. It is the government which is a duty bearer. It's the government that should take care of its people. But now the bigger question is, what is the framework under which this should be done? So the framework, I think we could look at the framework in terms of laws and policies, framework in terms of period, framework in terms of profiling, framework in terms of expertise. And I think when we speak about particularly the compensation that we are currently speaking of, which of course will be for human rights defenders as well as other members of the public, I think there are a lot of questions that have been canvassed over it. Of course, the issue of a period. I've told you the truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission did its work in 3 years. Yeah. Okay? And by the time they were finishing, they had done public hearings across the country, had 40,000 statements that were submitted. Now, we know the current team, the committee, was given 120 days. So you ask yourself, so what would happen in the 120 days? Would they have made the framework that is going to guide this? So for me, number one is the issue of timing. I think number two, we know, I think as a country, what happens when we get to conversations about compensation. And Kenyans, you know, when we had the post-election violence of 2007, 2008, we had some compensation that were done after that. The IDPs, the so-called internally displaced persons. And we saw how that process was bungled by a lot of claims of people that were either not there and that had not suffered any harm and all that. So the question on what is the process that is going to be handled. I think number three is the question of profiling. So how are you going to profile these people? So who is it that's going to be entitled? Because I think when we reduce this to just victims of police brutality, I think we make it so narrow. For me, and I think for the Commission, the conversation is about expanding this to all victims of human rights violations that have been perpetrated by the state. Because it's not just demonstrations.
But Samson,
Yes,
I have two questions. Let me start with the first one. Still in line with what has been asked. So there's something called the principle of reparation.
Yes.
As it has worked in other countries. In this instance, the reference is to protest victims. We're not going past 5 years, 10 years. This is the last 2 years. We're looking at just this example alone, and whether it is then right for government to lead the way and say, okay, you know what, you're going to compensate. Now, if I go back to the principle, and the reason why you've raised all these different points, and we're all canvassing around how credible, how authentic is the government in saying, look, we are willing to compensate. If we follow the principle of reparation, first, there is acknowledgement, which you rightly said. Yes. There needs to be acknowledgement. In this case, there's no acknowledgement yet. Number two is an apology. We still don't have an apology. Number three is where we have then rehabilitation and guarantees of non-repetition. We don't have any of this. So in principle, what you're saying, the principles of reparations have not been followed clearly. And what then this looks like to a lot of people, and that's what your view then will be clear on this, is are we treating this reparation conversation that the government is willing to pay victims of the protests as a financial payout? Or are we really looking at this holistically? Because if we go back to the TJRC, the report that you earlier mentioned, we know it was handed to the president and everything that was tabled there and all that, but we know what happened to the report. It was not implemented. So we have a history of not abiding by the rules of engagement when it refers to human rights.
No, absolutely, Dennis, and I agree with you. I think you put it so well. The three, of course, non-repetition, acknowledgement, and apology. I think when you look at it from outside, I think one of the things that there's a subtle acceptance that we were engaged by going to form this. There's a subtle acceptance at the back. I think what is the president and possibly his team are avoiding is coming out and saying, we did this.
And why? Why are they avoiding that?
I mean, how would I describe it, Dennis? How would I describe it? I think I would, for me, I would look at it in the context of just evading accountability. Because I think that's where we are.
Yes.
You don't want to acknowledge, you don't want to accept, you don't want to give apology, but you're also not guaranteeing that this is the last time that is happening, which I think is the most important thing. Because, I mean, defenders and of course as other Kenyans would continue from time to express themselves on public assembly, on demonstrations. And what we need, I think the assurance that we need is that when this were to happen again, we are having 2027 general elections coming, and we know what happens during 2027 during elections. So I think what we need, the guarantee that we need is there will be non-repetition of killings. There will be non-repetition of enforced disappearances. There will be non-repetition of arbitrary detention and all that. But as we speak, I think we don't have those. So, and as others have said, it's a process, looks good but not very good.
So Samson, one would ask, if there is all the tenets when it comes to matters to do with compensation, if all these have not been followed, why engage in a process that the state might as well just decide to do the very same thing it has done today? What's the need of it? Because one would look at the state in terms of the human rights. You look at rights defenders and the government, and one would argue that they complement each other because they are supposed to protect human rights. But the government is not doing that. So here we're talking about compensation, but one party has not acknowledged we've done wrong. So why engage in a process that we know will still do the same thing at the end of the day?
I think it's a process, how would I describe it? It's a process that I think, for lack of a better term, would not yield the intended results. Because the intended result is an accountable. Because I think for us that the Commission will say, the focus is that we need to ensure there is accountability for human rights violations. Of course, compensation is good. But as you compensate, I know the person who pulled the trigger. I know the person who kidnapped me. I know the person who did this and that. I can still see that person, or I've not seen people being pulled through a court process to answer to some of these violations. So I think we need to move from the conversation about compensation on one hand and focus more on seeking accountability and ensuring that really we do have a non-repetition of this. Because even if we compensate, we acknowledge, we do all this, and we do not guarantee that non-repetition will happen, then we will be back to the same cycle, maybe sooner than later. And God forbid, if we have another demonstration, say in the next 2 months, we might have maybe people dead, others lost part of their bodies. And I don't know whether we'll now create a new framework for compensating those, because then we'll possibly always be in a cycle
of compensation.
Why
would government then, why would the president, why would his advisors then not call on the commission to set up a body like this? Why would we need to call on other parties outside of the commission to say, well, okay, fine, these are the complaints that we're hearing from the people? Why wouldn't they say the commission then would be able to handle this? Is the work you do every day?
I think I was trying to avoid that too, but then...
Sorry. But
I was trying to avoid that. But I think if you look at, I think part of the commitment of the broad-based government, I think part of the commitment was to deal with victims of police brutality, particularly those that are related to 2017 general elections, as well as 2022 and then 2024 and 2025. So possibly, I think this is being done in fulfillment of that.
Really?
Maybe, Dennis. Maybe. I would look at it from that. Because, I mean, all the tenets are lacking. The tenets of acknowledgement, the tenets of apology, the tenets of non-repetition, all of them are lacking. So where do you really place this? Yeah, I would look at
So
it
we
from-
say the exercise that is ongoing right now is pure politics, simply because individuals sat in a boardroom, agreed on a 10-point agenda, and top on that agenda was to compensate victims, not because they want to, not because they are willing to stop, but simply because there is a political agenda that we want to achieve because we put it on paper.
No, I think
Because one would say,
Yes.
when you talk about police brutality, it is the very same government that would come and tell you on such and such a date we deployed X number of police officers with X number of bullets, with X number of guns, with serial numbers, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
they were deployed under command responsibility of this officer, you know, and they went back to the barracks. Even lunch, they were offered A, B, C, D, right? But it is the very same government that is not coming out to tell you that out of investigations that you've taken, these are the number of bullets we gave out, these are the ones that have returned. And those that were used, investigations show they were lodged in X person and have been retrieved, ballistics have taken place. The government is not doing any of that. But individuals sit, decide on a broad-based government 10-point agenda, and then we see compensation. Can there ever be justice? Can there ever be compensation without justice, or vice versa?
No, I think government, again, has the primary role, promoting, defending, fulfilling, and providing an enabling environment where people, not just human rights defenders, where everyone should be able to exercise and realize their rights. So, I mean, when it comes to doing this, I know there could be hits and misses. There could be a couple of trials and errors. But I think finally the end game should be to ensure that after all is done, we are at a point where rights of every person is promoted and protected, even with the trials and errors. The compensation thing could be a trial and error, but which is aimed at ensuring that those who suffered in one way or the other get some form of reprieve. But then, can we compensate and do the other things that come with it? I think that's what we are calling as actors working in this space. Compensate, do it rightly, of course, expand this, but also do the other things that come with it, which is really ensuring that there's accountability for human rights violations. I think that's the bottom line, so that we have an environment where everyone is free.
What would you say is the reason why the government is going for human rights defenders? From where you sit?
I mean, from where I sit and from the Commission's perspective is the role played by defenders in terms of watchdogging the government is a role that never sits well with the government. Because if you look at the things that defenders do, they expose the bad. They expose all those things that no one wants to speak about. So they'll expose corruption, they'll expose bad governance, they'll expose extrajudicial executions, they'll expose enforced disappearances. In certain cases, they would empower the public and all those. So, I mean, in that context, you'll always find that the government would never, and that's why I told you, funding of national human rights institutions across the world, for example, and these are states-created agencies. They have challenges of funding, they have challenges of implementation of their recommendations, they have challenges of staffing, they have challenges, all those challenges. So for me, for the Commission, it's just a case of making their life difficult so that they are not able to deliver what is expected from them. And so that we have a free space where we can do what we want. Because despite the fact that the government is the primary duty bearer, the government is also the greatest violator of human rights when it comes to allocation of resources, provision of education.
Is this
health.
across governments, or are we talking about this particular government?
No, I think it applies across governments.
Across governments in all over the world.
Across governments all over the world.
We're essentially saying governments are the largest and greatest, because, you know, those two are not the same. In terms of number and also in terms of degree and depth, the worst perpetrator. So then I'm still wondering then, how do you set up a commission to check these excesses when it's already known, it's common knowledge that you who is setting up the commission know that you're the worst at this thing, but then we expect that you would listen to the recommendations of the commission and that you would actually make sure that this doesn't happen again, either by setting a precedent, by prosecuting people who actually do. It seems as though we set up these commissions to make it seem as though something is being done, knowing full well that they will not be able to actually live out the mandate that has been accorded them because of you yourself. It seems a very difficult position that the commission
it's a very difficult. It's a very difficult position. I think not just for KNCHR, but if you look at Chapter 15 commissions, that we really call the defenders of the Constitution, they have a very difficult role in terms of defending and ensuring that what is provided for in the Constitution is implemented. But I think one of the things that we must also all agree to is that government has what I would call, it has monopoly of power. We say it has monopoly of violence, but this can only be checked by these creations, the commissions, of course, the judiciary, the legislature, all those, in one way or the other, they need to support each other, because I think it's work that cannot be done by a single institution. It's work that calls for a lot of collaboration from state agencies, because, we know the executive yields immense powers, and it's powers that needs to be checked, and that is where the Constitution has provided for all these. Of course, the commissions, we have the judiciary as well as other institutions that really help in ensuring that there's accountability for what the government promises to do.
And is that also not a problem or bottleneck? Because what we seem to see, unlike we say, the Constitution and the law is very clear, but you have these layered agencies that then do these checks and balances that at some point there's conflict. And I'll give an example. This is outside this human rights conversation. For example, you have ESCC, you have the ODPP, you have the judiciary, you've got the police on one side. So you'll find the ODPP will say, okay, we want to prosecute, this is how we want to do it. ESCC will come and say, no, hold on a minute. This is actually how this should go. So you have the subject matter, you've got this conflict going on behind the scenes because of these layered agencies that are supposed to work then together. And in your case, I'm sure you're supposed to be then working with IPOA, for example, correct?
Yes.
So if IPOA then is lagging, then it also stops you from going on with your work, right? Because you don't have prosecutorial powers.
Yes.
Same thing with IPOA. And at the end of the day, all these things, after all the talk is done, it has to still go to the ODPP. Is that also not a problem?
No, I don't think it's a problem. It's a problem.
Or a bottleneck. A bottleneck.
It's a bottleneck. I think that's the right term. It's a bottleneck. Because I think one of the things we say in the government is that we have this thing that we call one government approach. I think that is one. But number two, that we also have independence of institutions. And institutions, guard their mandate so fiercely.
And can also be influenced.
Yes. But I think the bottom line, I think, for all these institutions, whether it's the Commission, whether it's IPOA, whether it's ACC, is to ensure that members of the public are able to access what they require. That if your rights are violated, you should be able to get a redress. And therefore, the need for collaboration. That is why I think in the government cycles, we have a couple of these. There are institutions that bring, there are frameworks that bring them together. Like, for example, we have a framework known as National Council on Administration of Justice that brings in all these actors working on access to justice. So you'll find the police there, you'll find KNCHR, you'll find IPOA, ODPP, and all that. So they use some of this framework to discuss some of these challenges that you are saying, because it's been argued rightly that these bottlenecks in one way or the other affects delivery of service. It affects institutions from doing what is required. So frameworks like KNCHR that also has subcommittees then ensure that we are able to discuss these bottlenecks and get away that would make things move faster.
What, in your opinion, then, do you find as the major bottleneck to justice? So you've collected, because a lot of times people argue, you will be so good at collecting numbers and doing reports and having all these reports, but you have no teeth to bite. So in this case, you have the number of people who are killed. You know the people who killed them. We know then their names and their families. We know those who are maimed. And then you put a report, so we have 100 people, this and this is what happened. 40 people, this and this is what happened. And then what next? In your opinion, what is the biggest stumbling block to having then justice at the end of the day? The reason why the commission exists in the first place?
I think the biggest stumbling block is really the lethargy that we see in other state institutions that are expected to, say, do prosecution, do investigation, do follow-ups and all that. And I think the issue of collaboration, because one of the challenges that we face is, for example, commission will do, and you put it rightly, commission does not have prosecutorial powers. Also, if you look at our investigative powers, is that we have in powers, but we do human rights investigation. So when it comes to doing criminal investigations, we depend on the National Police Service. And it's expected that when you have a matter, of course, you'll make a referral and say, this has come to our attention, this and this has been done, but at this level, we need your cooperation. That will stay 4, 5, 6 months without getting a feedback. So you can imagine what that
because of the perpetrators.
Yeah. Yes, so you can imagine what that means. So for me, the issue of collaboration between institutions, if we can have collaboration that is fruitful, collaboration that allows for quick feedback, quick responses, quick actions, I think we would be able to deal with a couple of the challenges that we have.
Samson, let me just throw this question there. So here's a question where you've done your investigations, but it gets to a point where you now need to refer it to the police, right? And it is a matter that squarely falls on their door. So even when you're making these recommendations, has it ever occurred to you to just know, fine, you're making recommendations, but we know nothing is going to happen? How many times has that idea hit you, and how do you proceed?
If you look at the structure of the National Police Service, for example, within the National Police Service, we have what we call internal affairs units that deal with issues of internal oversight and internal accountability. Yeah. But now on the outside, we have Independent Policing Oversight Authority. And I'm using this because we are speaking about the police. Now, and I have the opportunity to have been engaged in developing the National Police Service Act and in the Independent Policing Oversight Authority Act. We were aware of this fact, of the challenges that police officers, number one, cannot investigate themselves. They cannot hold themselves to account. They cannot do all these things. And they're also the biggest perpetrators. That is why we established an internal affairs unit within the service, so that that unit would help even in working with other organizations like us. So that if you have an issue, particularly, let's say, a matter where you require investigation of a police officer, we would make a direct contact with internal affairs unit. Unfortunately, the internal affairs unit also works under the Inspector General. Okay? But then now we have the external oversight. So in cases where we hit bottlenecks, particularly with internal affairs unit, then we move to Independent Policing Oversight Authority. So they are all, in one way or the other, you find that you'll face challenges here, but there'll always be a way out. That way out might not work as fast as you expect, but it delivers results, because I know there are cases where commission has investigated, referred to IPOA, referred to ODPP, and we've seen prosecution of police officers or people that have violated rights. So it works, yes, but at a very slow pace. And that's why I said, haki ayozi. At some point, violations they'll catch up with you at some point.
Have there been examples where such a thing has been asked for and government has actually said, okay, here excesses have been realized, we've understood that something needs to be done, and has actually seen the process through, where a violation has occurred, there has been recognition of that violation, there has been an attempt at reconciliation and restoration, and the process has been seen through? Ever?
In Kenya?
Yes.
That's like asking if a camel has ever passed through the eye of a needle in Kenya. You see how Samson took a back seat, like, in Kenya?
He's asking in Kenya, like, oh my Lord, is it possible?
We're in Ethiopia, we're in Kenya, bro.
I mean, I would look at it. Dennis, I look at it from. Okay.
No, don't look at it.
No, let me go to it. I would say that there are cases. I would not call it whether there has been a case where you've said this happened, government has acknowledged, and something has been done about. Let me give you an example. We've consistently spoken about the issue of enforced disappearances and extrajudicial executions. And the government, of course, through the National Police Service, has always indicated that they have challenges in dealing with this. So whether it's in terms of investigations, in terms of documentation and all that. So one of the things the government did arising out of our intervention, of course, after persistent reminders and follow-up, is that it's ended up in putting together a multi-agency team.
Oh, good Lord. Okay. Sorry.
Yes.
So,
So the multi-agency team is comprised of state institutions that in one way or the other have a significance on conversations of enforced disappearances.
Okay.
So in that multi-agency team, we have Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, we have the Office of the Attorney General, we have ODPP, we have Independent Policing Oversight Authority, and then we have some other few CSO that are consistently speaking about this. Now, arising out of that, the expectation is that this and I can see the way Dennis is looking at me, is that this multi-agency team would help in advising the government in terms of what should be done.
Wait,
so
Samson.
it is a process.
Oh my Lord.
Samson, wait. Samson, you know, you are a good man. You have very good thoughts and very good wishes, and you're very optimistic. And now, let's come back to Kenya.
Yes.
You know, if you walk around, and Dennis, if you walk around these hotels in this city, you'll be surprised how many stakeholder meetings are happening behind these conference rooms.
Yes.
And then the tea breaks, and then the lunch. The multi-agencies that Samson is saying, these term multi-agency, you know, if the things you're so good at in this country, task forces, committees,
to have a conversation,
multi-agencies, to have a conversation. Look, you're talking about forced disappearances and extrajudicial killings. It's not my neighbor Alex or my neighbor in your neighborhood. Do you wake up in the morning, start killing people around, and then you disappear, and then the government does not know, okay, what happened to these people? We know the actors. So you have these same actors meeting and having tea and their budgets around this to discuss. Guys, what should we do? People, you have noticed people have disappeared. Wait.
No, I mean,
you know, people have disappeared.
So let's talk about it.
Let's talk.
And you know, they disappeared in our vehicles.
Yeah, and then we say that is an intervention that has been taken to deal with this thing.
I mean, look, and if you look at it, is one of the things the government says is, and one of the roles that we play is to advise the government.
That does not listen.
Definitely listens to others, but does not listen to others. So the dog that you spoke about,
does it tire you?
No, it doesn't tire us. It's not tiring us. It's not tiring us because, of course, we see results to it. The results might be slow, but we see results. I mean, from time to time. So we know. And for me, we always say that we should never tire from speaking about violations. We should never tire from supporting human rights defenders. We should never tire from doing the right thing. Increasingly, at some point, a step made, we will never get back to really, we'll never get back to where we started.
You know, if we look back and say, okay, history can then inform us that, okay, you can, there is a point where we can go back and say, look, it worked. Let's even go to the Wagala massacre. This was 83, 84, thereabout.
Yes.
When it happened, there was a whole report that was done. Recommendations were made, these recommendations that you're talking about. But do you know, there is no single senior official that has ever been prosecuted from Wagala massacre. Yes. Okay, we come back to TGRC. The report was done and presented to the president. Again, very good, fine recommendations in a report, and the document was done. But until today, We don't
Nada.
see anything.
Post-election
violence.
Nothing.
Same thing. Apart from the fellows then who went to ICC. Again, no prosecution.
Yeah.
Today, we're talking about anti-finance bill protests and last year, Sabasaba protests. Again, we're still talking about recommendations.
Task
We'll
force.
sit together in this task force.
And on that note, because I think the signs in the hands of the sands of time are very clear. Samson Omondi, the Assistant Director of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, having a conversation about shrinking spaces for human rights defenders. That's been our conversation. I guess a cliffhanger sometimes, in terms of where we're going, is a good thing. Thank you for being here on the show this morning and for at least opening our eyes to some of the realities that exist. And thank you for keeping it Kenya's biggest conversation on this Justice Thursday. Those are the conversations that we have had. And as you've been out with us on the show, we say thank you and we'll continue talking about these things. Have a good morning and the rest of the day.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.